in me yet. So anyway, let's talk about the presentation. Well, we're starting a little bit late, so I'll try to finish on time just because I should. Let's see. So anyway, let me talk about how this one came about. Actually, let me go back a little bit before that because I was at this event, you know, it was an executive event, and then there was some guy going on, and this was probably roughly, I give it 10 years ago, and this guy was going on somewhat about, wow, if you have a CISSP, that's your ticket to employment forever. And you will never be unemployed if you have a CISSP. Let me ask this honestly, has there ever been anybody in this audience with a CISSP that has been unemployed for a period of time? How many of you are, you know, I mean, and again, there's lots of people right now with a CISSP that are unemployed. So anyway, if people, most of you know me, so obviously my first reaction was to go to the guy who was running the thing. I go, who the hell is that moron? And it turns out, well, this was a Chatham House Rules event, so the best I can tell you is he was a former White House cybersecurity czar, and I could, well, just for the sake of argument, I could tell you he wasn't Howard Schmidt, he wasn't Richard Clark, he wasn't Amit Yaran, he wasn't, who else? He wasn't Chris Inglis, he wasn't Harry Coker, you know, it was roughly 10 years ago, so you could figure he was a former guy who was hailed because of his visionary appointment, because he's not from the cybersecurity industry, he came from other parts of the industry like running ICANN, but I didn't, you know, you didn't hear that from me. So anyway, you know, and I'm sitting here, why do these people have these bizarre impressions of things? And then you fast forward to like current day, and you see countless people, like I have a lot of friends who are unemployed. You go ahead, you look on the internet, and you see, what was it? Amazon laid off like, you know, thousands of people. You have Cisco laid off thousands of people, Intel laid off thousands of people, and so on. And everybody's saying, wow, we need more people in cybersecurity. That's just flat out bullshit, and you know this stuff. So anyway, with all of that being said, then you still have people on the internet, and let's see, does this work? Yeah, cybersecurity influencers with my Dr. Evil quotes. And all these people are selling boot camps. All these people are like that former White House cyber czar moron saying a CISSP or now a Security Plus is your ticket to employment for the rest of your life. And this sort of stuff drives me crazy because when you look at these people, they think one guy is literally selling courses on how to get into cybersecurity, not by developing knowledge, but by developing a LinkedIn following. And just for the point of fact, this LinkedIn influencer who's bizarrely up for a Sans Making a Difference award, and I'm up for 2, and I really wanted to resign that thing when I found out he was up for 1. He's basically going ahead. He's unemployed, he's serially unemployed, and he's selling courses on how to get into cybersecurity. You can't make this crap up. But he has more than 100,000 followers on LinkedIn, and all these people are like, or at least some of them, are paying him like $50 a pop to take his course on how to get a job in cybersecurity. He's even writing a book on red teaming, and he can't even keep a job as a help desk analyst. And I wish I was making this stuff up, but I'm not. But this is what is out there, you know, in the absence of people putting out good information about how to get into cybersecurity. And the fact of the matter is, there is good information on how to get into cybersecurity, but nobody wants to listen to it because it's not easy. You know, I'll go back and I'll start a little bit about me. Some people know this. When I was growing up, I always wanted to be an astronaut, a veterinarian, or a spy. You know, I still haven't given most of those up. I did become a spy technically, so that's one thing. But the reality of the situation is when I was growing up being an astronaut, I was 13 years old when they started putting out like accepting applications to be a mission specialist, you know, for the space shuttle program. So I started writing NASA when I was 13 years old saying, well, I know I need to have a college degree, but if you could just hold a slot for me, I would appreciate it because I'll do this, I'm staying in shape, blah, blah, blah. And of course, NASA, well, they didn't totally ignore me. They kept sending me applications that still had the requirements. But at least back then, when I wanted to be an astronaut, a veterinarian, or a spy, I kept going on. And I'm like, okay, what are the qualifications I need to be something in that industry? Like I kept saying, okay, I need to get a college degree. And then I thought, well, veterinarian, you can be a veterinarian and be a mission specialist, so I'll be a veterinarian, and then just when I get my veterinary degree, then I'll be an astronaut. You know, probably not going to happen at this point, I must admit. But the reality is, this is what I was doing at the time, figuring out what are the qualifications and how do I go ahead and pursue this. Now people say, hey, I want to be in cybersecurity, and they act like there's something wrong with you by saying, okay, do you have any experience for the job? It's like, no, I just want to be in the profession. Give me a job. Do you know what I did? No, I think cybersecurity is cool. I watch the movies. You know, and that's what they want, to get in the profession. So anyway, you know, how do you go back to be an influencer, to go ahead and sell courses on how to get into cybersecurity without actually being in there? You put a bunch of crap up. While everybody else is telling people, you know what, you should get a degree, you should get a certification. All you have to do is tell people you don't need to know how to program. I don't need to know how to program, so why should you? You don't need, just ignore programming. Then they tell you, oh, when somebody goes ahead and puts a job description up, these are the people who are my favorite. They start getting up and saying, how dare they require qualifications for a job like this? They call it entry level, but why are there requirements? And then they get on Twitter and start yelling, but they get a lot of likes for that. You know, you don't need a degree to do cybersecurity jobs. You don't need certifications. You don't need experience. And, you know, you don't need that because companies should train you. They need cybersecurity people, so they should just hire you and train you. How many people ever got a job that said, hey, you're cool? Anybody else besides like me when I got a job at like a McDonald's type place? You know, but this is what people are out there hearing when they turn on the internet and go on, God, InfoSec hell, which is Twitter, you know, if you ever go on there for that. So anyway, you know, people, the reality is people do want jobs. Some people, I should say most people, are kind of sort of willing to learn. You know, they are this, but the problem is, how many of you are actually going out giving career advice? I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm assuming you have a life. You know, you don't have time to be on Twitter arguing with idiots about whether or not a job should have a $50,000 salary or a $100 billion salary like they're doing. You like let the morons play, because what's the saying? You know, when you argue with an idiot, the bystanders don't know who's the idiot or something like that. And so you just let these things go. You know, and then qualifications include possibly, you know, you start telling people, smart people do go ahead and they do get education, certifications, and things like that. And some people tell you need social media popularity. I disagree, obviously. Let me just, however, say that most of the jobs I've got, you know, other people I know get, it is through networking. So I don't want to totally discount social media, because if you could go ahead and start networking with people and start, like if you're unemployed or whatever, that's probably your best bet for getting jobs and networking with people. Because right now, if you submit your applications through those ATS systems, what is it, application tracking systems or something? Those aren't application tracking systems. They're just systems to go ahead and filter out anybody who doesn't know how to like play exactly with an AI, which is 99% of the people. Because usually the people I talk to, it's usually like maybe like 2% of people are getting 90% of the job interviews off of submitting their, you know, their applications through these systems. So it's not an easy thing, and you have to learn. Like if you're out of a job, you do need to figure out how to beat these systems and so on. So we'll talk about that a little bit. I literally put this up, and this picture got me 3 million views on LinkedIn, and I don't know why to this day. I stole this picture from someone else. There is attribution there, so I decided I don't feel terrible about it. But this is pretty much like what you see the cybersecurity influencers like. This is what you know, this is frankly my impression of entry-level people trying to get a job in cybersecurity. Because they're sitting there and they say, hey, I want to go into cybersecurity. I'm like, okay, what do you do? It's like, oh, well, I don't do anything. I just like cybersecurity. But the point is now, I think my background is next. Oh, anyway, I'll keep going with this for a second. Because fundamentally, if you want to be in cybersecurity, I'm not going to trust somebody if they don't know how to use the underlying technology they're supposed to secure. You know, I started out at NSA as a psychology major. And at the time, I'm lucky NSA hired me because, you know, I don't know who else was going to hire a psychology major. But what they did was they gave aptitude tests. They called it the CQB at the time, Career Qualification Battery Test. And it was like 10 different categories. And they're like, wow, you have really good computer aptitude. Do you want a computer internship? And I'm like, no, I hate computers. I want nothing to do with them. And then I was like, they're like, okay, what about cryptanalysis? Because you have really good aptitude in cryptanalysis. You know, you could look at break codes and do all that stuff. I go, I'm not looking at ones and zeros all day. And then what happened was I took a job as an intelligence analyst. And in that job, what happened was all of a sudden I was looking at computer screens like 24 hours a day roughly because I was on a watch shift. And I thought, and I hated that job. Then I thought I couldn't hate computers any more than I hate that job. And I reapplied to the computer internship. And there I was. And it was poetic hell because I was programming computers for cryptanalysis. I could say my first computer was a Cray, which used to mean something at the time. But literally, there I was programming for cryptanalysis. But what did I do? Was I a cybersecurity expert? No, I was just like an intern doing crappy stuff, whatever they told me. Like write this section that tries to go ahead and see if there's, you know, some flaw in the encryption of these programs. And I would write that. Now, when you look at that, that's actually a cybersecurity job, trying to find flaws in crypto systems. Then you go ahead, and then I was going ahead and I was writing software for secure systems. You know, I didn't think of it at the time. I was just programming. Now that's a cybersecurity job. And all these other jobs, did I say, hey, I want to go into cybersecurity? If you actually worked at NSA at the time, cybersecurity was really sucky as a job, to put it mildly. Because all they had the reputation of doing was writing the red book, the orange book, the green book, the purple book, and all that stuff. And it was just a policy group. And nobody wanted to do cybersecurity, but yet there I was breaking enemy systems. There I was going ahead testing software for buffer overflows and things like that, doing configuration management, and all these things are now cybersecurity related jobs. The reason I was good at cybersecurity when I started doing cybersecurity is because I was doing it my whole career. And even if I wasn't doing directly cybersecurity, all the programming I was doing would be critical in knowing how do I go ahead and do good programming so I could tell programmers how to better write secure software. And too many people are out there thinking cybersecurity is one of these special disciplines. And it's not. Cybersecurity is a discipline that is really just a specialty on top of other disciplines. You know, frankly, I think cybersecurity is a field within computer science or information systems. You know, you look at computer graphics. What's computer graphics? Is that different from computers? I don't think so. You know, basically it's just focusing on how to go ahead and render graphics and things like that. But too many people like to say cybersecurity is this special field because they were chasing buzzwords. All of these bachelor's degrees in cybersecurity, I think, are doing people a disservice because it's taking away from the fundamentals of what people are securing. I once said that during a session where UMGC now was one of the exhibitors, and they complained about me because I was disproving the value of their flagship cybersecurity program. And the problem is their advertisement, and I don't know how many people saw this. How many people saw the advertisement where UMUC at the time, you know, we're training the special forces of the computer world. That's their advertisement. And I'm sitting there, and they're not training the special forces. They're training the quartermaster of the computer world. Because all they were doing was like policy discussions, not hands-on technology and everything. So anyway, that's all critical. Can you get hired without the fundamentals? The answer is yes, you can. But there are a few entry-level jobs. There are very few. I mean, I would hire people, for example, as a SOC analyst where you sit in there and watch things. Maybe you need people to do grunt work. Maybe you're in a large organization and you need people to do like things to support people who are doing penetration testing and run the scanning tools and so on. But those jobs are kind of few and far between. But the other aspect, it doesn't mean there's no prerequisites. I don't go ahead and, even if I was hiring entry-level people, here's the thing, I actually was hiring entry-level people, and the only thing we actually had as a qualification was understanding of basic network tools or basic networking protocols, because we didn't want to eliminate people without a college degree, because we did want to bring in people from the NOC of the company, the Network Operations Center, and be able to give them a career path into security operations and stuff like that. So the only thing we said was a basic understanding. But who are the people I was hiring? People with 3 years of NOC experience tracking down and verifying network issues. I mean, 4 of the people I hired for entry-level positions had a master's degree in cybersecurity. There were a few people with a lot of other credentials, like recommended from other organizations. And this was what people were going against if they had no qualifications. You had people with a lot of experience, you had people with a lot of degrees, a lot of certifications, and this is who's going for entry-level jobs in cybersecurity. But anyway, you know, keep that in mind as people start saying it. Now, my personal bias, like I started to mention, you know, I've been a hiring manager in a lot of places. I was grandfathered into my CISSP. I did not have to take the test because there was no test. They gave me like a list of questions to answer on how I satisfied each of the 10 domains. And so like my CISSP number is 3116. And all the privacy people are going to freak out saying, you just gave PII. I'm like, I don't know. What are you going to do with a CISSP number? Get me extra credits, okay? So anyway, then I've been pursuing my PhD for 30-ish years, give or take. And I teach at a few universities. Now, I haven't done that actively, but I am officially on their faculties. And I also hired people without certifications, without degrees, and so on. One of the guys who I had as my favorite deputy, that when I was a CISO, I brought him over to run the SOC under me. He didn't have a college degree. He was actually 6 credits short of a college degree. And he just never finished it because he didn't want to go back. He got out of the military, said, screw it. But he was still one of the most smartest, most competent people I know in just doing basic cybersecurity operations. So yeah, I kept bringing him with me whenever I could. Now, let's go on specifically. And here's one of the problems I hear. They're like, well, these people get degrees, but they really don't know anything about cybersecurity. I'm like, they're not supposed to. Too many people, and I blame this on the programs of cybersecurity and all the advertisements. A college degree is not a trade school. A college degree does not mean you can go straight into a job like, for example, you're a plumber, now you are a plumber, you know, you go to plumber school, now you're a plumber's assistant or something like that. A college degree is really just a fundamental specialization while you're getting a degree. It's to get people from 18 years old to 22 years old in a setting where, yes, maybe they can mature and stop being complete morons. Not to say that they're not morons when they come out of school, but it stops them from being complete morons with a little bit more maturity. But more important, you know, you get a whole bunch of other stuff. Your college major is roughly only 30 credits out of 120. That means that it's less than 25% of your degree program. The other part of it is, frankly, what's more important. I don't know how many of you remember, like, in cybersecurity, there's like a pendulum saying, we need people with soft skills. And then those soft skills show to be completely useless, and then it goes back the other way, saying we need people with technical skills. But what happens is, like, for example, have you ever seen a penetration test report put out by a hacker who doesn't know how to write? Those things are nightmares. They don't know how to write. They don't have a way of telling people how to fix their things intentionally. They don't know how to do things. Even in cybersecurity, you want to go ahead and developing, you know, your job might be to develop secure programming standards. If you don't know how to write well and present it well, nobody's going to be able to listen to you to know how to take your advice into what do you call it, consideration. And that's a problem if you don't have that. And then the rest of it, a good portion, frankly, is just being able to relate to the rest of your environment. So for example, you take some business courses, you take some language courses, you take a whole bunch of other stuff, and everybody's like, that's completely useless. It's like, well, is it? Because in cybersecurity, your job is not to function in a vacuum. Your job is to provide a service to the organization you serve. And if you have zero knowledge and have zero interest in figuring out the information background of everybody else and knowing what their requirements might be, that's a problem with you. And you're going to go ahead and give our profession a bad name. And that, again, is a serious thing to consider. But either way, I want to reiterate, I don't say a college degree makes you an expert. There's a video I was just thinking about I should have added right before the presentation. Did anybody watch the series Tulsa King? It's out now. You know, there's a scene in there where Sylvester Stallone's talking to the kid with him about getting his college degree. And I'm just like, you could watch the video later, it's 20 seconds, but roughly, you know, Sylvester Stallone goes on a rant saying, look, your college degree is not supposed to say, sorry, I cursed a little bit, so I'll just continue it. It's Sylvester Stallone, remember. Your college degree doesn't show shit about what you know. Your college degree basically goes ahead and shows that you can show up for 4 years, do a number of assigned tasks in a generally good way, on time most of the time, and that when they hire you, at least they know you should have some of the same qualities, and there's a reasonably good chance you'll be able to show up and do a job on time on a regular basis for them. And frankly, that's a good enough definition of what a college degree is supposed to be. Yes, maybe you come away with basic programming skills. And that's a big thing fundamentally, because everybody's like, oh, cybersecurity degree. Most of these cybersecurity degrees are on general topics. You need, I mean, most entry-level degrees are hands-on technology, being a SOC operator, watching things come and go. And frankly, even if you want to go into GRC, and GRC is a very legitimate topic, project management. When I was chief security architect at Walmart, I'd say probably we had maybe 5 people doing red teaming, and we had roughly 100 people doing project management. Project management is a very, very legitimate part because it keeps the whole program on track. But even for project management, and you want to go in without a technical degree, great, you don't know how to program? Are you taking project management classes? Are you taking business classes to keep finances and so on? There's so many other things. Even if you don't want to have a technical degree, it still doesn't mean you just go ahead and wish your way to a job. There's a background to it. So anyway, advanced degrees, I just spoke about masters. Advanced degrees are a little different in my opinion, because an advanced degree is roughly 30 credits, 2 years of worth of classes on specifically related to your course of study, and it is a specialization. It's not necessarily like directly hands-on, it helps you just be better. It teaches you theory, some application or whatever, but that's an important part of it. PhDs and doctoral degrees, because I remember, and remember, I'm going for my doctoral degree for like 30 years. I'm not making that up. And I saw somebody criticizing, oh, here's somebody on the faculty, like a new faculty member is judging somebody with 30 years in the profession. Why does that seem reasonable? Because the thing about a doctoral degree is you are not going there to be a better professional. A doctoral degree is specifically to pursue either a career in research or a career in academia. And if you're going to do research, research means, for example, I'm going to develop this new product, and this new product has algorithms. You need to have a systematic way of developing the product. You need to have a provable way of developing the product, and so on. Likewise, you know, if you want to go into academia, it's completely irrelevant how much you know about the subject at hand. I know that sounds bad, but fundamentally, they want to see you know how to do research that gets published, that provides esteem to the university. And that's important to them. It helps them get funding. Universities are a business, and you need to understand that even as a doctoral student, you are serving the needs of the business of a university, which is to put out research to provide esteem to the university. And yes, I have to play the game. I literally got a patent out of my doctoral research so far. And I'm still there like, oh, that patent's nice. We still want to see you publish in some journals, like maybe 2 or 3 of them. I'm like, are you kidding me? And they're not. but that is the game you have to play. It's not to make you better. I'm not sitting around there saying I'm smarter at cybersecurity than my professors, because I'm not there to be cybersecurity. I'm there to be a researcher slash academic, and you need to understand that. And I also want to say before I go on, the hardest working people I've ever seen are those people who get a bachelor's degree part-time. Those are people in after hours. These are people who have gone through marriages, divorces, kids, or whatever. And much like Sylvester Stallone said, they show up for 10 years or more. And you got to give these people credit. Screw Harvard graduates. Find yourself somebody getting a degree part-time. I'll give you that. Those are going to be your best workers. And then there's also something, I don't know if anybody's heard of Jim Rohn. He's one of these motivational guys. Like a lot of people hear about Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins steals 90% of his stuff from Jim Rohn. And Jim Rohn had a really good quote. And it's like, you should become a millionaire not for the money, but what it makes you to become a millionaire. Because there's a follow-on to it, because once you know how to be a millionaire, you can go ahead and lose all the money and get it back. And that's critical to people. So anyway, the part is it makes you something to get a college degree. Am I doing anything or just, okay, sorry, to ask. So anyway, it makes you to show up, like Sylvester Stallone said, showing up on a regular basis, being able to hit assignments repeatedly is valuable to others. So now let's talk about specific courses and training, like some of the courses here. These are things to teach you a skill that you could potentially make you better at job functions. And those are very legitimate. If you have the time and can afford them, and they're relevant to what you want to do, yes, go out and get training. Go out, a lot of certifications are really, you take a training class and a test later. In that case, sure, go out and get those. But, for example, like, I'm not going to attend it, but like the AI thing that John's holding later today, I think it is, that's a good example of some training that might be useful. Because there's another concept, I don't think I have a slide on here, but I should, so I'll go into that now. Anybody here really know about AI? Because here's the thing about AI, and I said this yesterday in the CISO forum, AI is just math. And actually, this is kind of a relevant point. So a few years ago, I spoke at USecCon. USecCon is the Houston Security Conference, and it's a really, really, really good conference. And they were playing Hacker Jeopardy at that conference. And I was sitting in the audience, and every so often I was frustrated because I knew the answer and all the three teams on there didn't. And then what happened was we're coming down to Final Jeopardy. And Final Jeopardy, the question was, what is the number, and I'm making up the number, but it's irrelevant. What is the number 147 in binary, hexadecimal, and octal? And I just said, oh my God, that's so easy. I just put my paper down because it wasn't worth figuring out. And nobody on the stage, 9 cybersecurity professionals sitting there, did not know binary, octal, and hexadecimal. Nobody else in an audience of 200 people knew binary, octal, and hexadecimal. And I don't think I'm a genius for knowing this. This I learned in high school. But why is it important to know binary, octal, and hexadecimal? If you ever do incident response and have to look at a dump, that's all in hexadecimal. If you ever have to do cryptanalysis like I did in NSA, that's all binary. If you ever have to do other things, octal is just a leftover of binary and hexadecimal. And when people don't know how to do basic math, and literally binary math is basic math for computers. If you don't know how to do this, how are you going to do AI? Because what AI is really just sets of mathematical algorithms. And that's what I got a patent in something I really don't understand. And that's true, unfortunately. But literally, it's like all these advanced mathematical formulas. You have to know how to look at a mathematical formula and implement this. And without being able to do this, you're not going to be able to function in AI because, yes, AI is going to take your jobs in some cases. I'm not saying that as fear-mongering, but if you have a repetitive job or something that could be done with a little bit of tweaking by a computer, that is going to take your job. However, if you know how to program and you know how to do math, you can go ahead and learn how to implement all these things. And that's a good thing. That keeps you employed. You don't stay employed because you know a skill from 30 years ago. You stay employed because you have abilities that can take you into any forward-looking career. And in AI, if you didn't take all that mathematics that's usually associated with computer science that they force you to take, and God, I never did finish freshman calculus, I must admit. But still, I was looking at sitting in my data mining class, looking at formulas that I kind of sort of remembered, but I knew enough on how to implement to go ahead and implement certain AI principles. But if you don't understand basic math that you learn getting a college degree in computer science, you're going to have a lot of problems moving forward if you want a new career. So anyway, then there are certifications. Certifications, frankly, are probably one of the most controversial things, because how many people get pissed off when you have to go ahead and submit your $100 whatever dollars to ISC squared, ISOC, or whatever? You know, I mean, what is this actually showing you? And again, I'm older than many of you. How many people remember the early 2000s when you had companies like, what was it, Guardant, Securify, a bunch of other, all these companies were popping up, and VCs were giving them like $75 million, and they were going to be cybersecurity services companies. And what were these services companies doing with $75 million? They were hiring people because at that time, headcount equaled potential revenue. That was their mathematics. That was their business model and everything. And what did that translate into for most people? They were giving people who were still in high school a business card that said Junior Cybersecurity Analyst. And when they graduated high school, they changed it to Cybersecurity Analyst and took the junior off. Why? Because there was no qualification at the time. CISSPs and other degrees say you are distinguished from any moron who wants to go ahead and call themselves a cybersecurity professional. You know, like I said, I was grandfathered into the CISSP. Why did I do it? Honestly, I don't know. I didn't need it. I was working for a defense contractor at the time. But I thought, hey, it sounds cool. Let me go ahead and put some letters after my name because it's cool. Anyway, I think it was 1999, I looked at a help wanted ad, and I'm like, I'm going to keep my CISSP while I let my CISM expire. And why'd I do that? Because in the help wanted ad, it said CISSP required for the job. And literally, what is the purpose of a certification? The purpose of a certification is to prove to an outside person that you are qualified for a position, maybe not over somebody else, but that you're just fit a basic qualification. It doesn't mean you're competent in it. It just says you have filled qualifications that an authoritative third party has deemed as a professional. Like a professional engineer, we don't hear about those anymore because it seems like all the engineers are now computer people these days. But professional engineers used to be something critical for insurance requirements, that companies would have to hire a professional engineer. Now when there's a data breach, how many people remember, what was it, the Equifax data breach, and everybody was going after the Equifax CISO because she was a music major? You know, I'm like sitting there saying the music major was the least of the problem to consider here. But that's what they were doing. However, if they said, well, she has a CISSP, it's like at least they deem, you know, this is it. Just imagine you're sitting there in a data breach report, or you're like a lawsuit because, you know, lawyers come out, like crawl out of the sewer whenever there's a cybersecurity incident. They crawl out of the sewer just to launch a class action lawsuit, you know, because they get money no matter what. You know, the people like, I mean, literally, there was a class action lawsuit where there was tainted dog food and dogs died. If you could prove that your dog died as a result of the tainted dog food and not for 1,000 other causes, it would give you a coupon for free dog food while the lawyers came away with $20 million. That's essentially the nature of class action lawsuits. But what happens when you're sitting across from somebody at a table? They're interviewing the CISO, and they're like, oh, here's a good one, United Healthcare. They deserve the hell they right now because they hired a CISO that has no cybersecurity experience. But what's going to happen there? They're like, oh, excuse me, you don't have a CISSP? It's like, no, it's like, aren't there like 100,000 CISSPs in the world, and a Fortune 10 company can't hire a CISO with a CISSP? You know, that looks bad to a jury. It's a due diligence principle to hire people with this. So what's the value of the certification? Is it that you feel welcomed and supported by ISC squared? No. ISC Square's only responsibility for you is that if you pay and maintain a CISSP, that people care you have the CISSP over other people. That's the purpose. People can get a medical degree, but they have to be certified as a doctor, or they have to be licensed as a doctor. So you can have the degree, but if you're not licensed, you're not qualified because a third party has to license you, and so on. It's the same thing with bar associations for lawyers. A bar association is showing you have legitimacy to practice beyond just having a law degree, which actually says nothing, because I think half the country has a law degree these days. So anyway, keep that in mind. Oh yeah, what do you call the person who graduates at the bottom of their medical school class? Yep, what do you call the cop who graduates at the bottom of his police academy? Officer. You know, all these things, it doesn't matter where you are. Some are more competent than others, but at least you're certified. That's the critical thing. And there's value to other people. Certification value, again, it depends on who's hiring you. Like, do I care if somebody has a certification? I'll be upfront with you. My personal opinion is, do I think a person with a certification is going to be better qualified than somebody without? Generally not. However, when I look at somebody and I see they have a certification, that tells me that at least that person put in some effort to distinguish themselves from other people. They've invested their time, they've invested their money, they learned material they wouldn't otherwise have to learn to show that they want to be in the profession. That is what it means to me. I don't think they might be more technically qualified, but it shows they have more of a devotion to the profession than somebody just says, you know, I've been doing this for a while, I don't need anything. It's like, you don't know what you need. So anyway, this is kind of why I like to see a certification. But in the end, it's the clients. Like if you're a consultant, like, you know, I saw somebody, I'm not going to mention his name, he's a really smart guy, really good guy. He's like, why the hell do I need one? Everybody knows who I am. And awesome, if everybody knows who you are when they see your name, when it comes up on a proposal or a job application or whatever, awesome. You don't need it. On the other hand, if you're not recognized, you kind of need it to be distinguished from other people, especially when job requirement says CISSP required. So anyway, programming, this is one that really, really drives me crazy. Because I see a lot of people, and I see people touting on Twitter, I didn't know how to program, so neither should you. And I'm like sitting there, well, you kind of had 20 years of experience before you went into cybersecurity, and you're not acknowledging that. You kind of had a lot of other experience, but the fact of the matter is fundamentally programming itself, like, is there anybody here that has, well, I'm not, sorry, I won't survey people, but for example, when I was doing security awareness, do you know how useful it was to program? Because I'd have to get data in spreadsheets and then have to know how to write programs to pull people out and sort things. When you're a project manager, do you know how much better it is when you could start pulling things out, doing calculations, doing what-if things and versions and things like that, and recalculating time? You know, even for example, I know finance majors that are downloading Python on their own because knowing programming is so much better for them than not knowing programming compared to other finance analysts. And if you're telling me you're in a computer-related profession and you don't want to understand the fundamental basics of really what it is, I don't want anything to do with you. Because at the end of the day, I care more that you're willfully ignorant than whether or not you know how to program. Because programming, like I said, there are people outside our profession, outside of IT, that want to learn to program because they know it's useful. And if you're sitting there being proud you don't know how to program, I'm like, you're proud to be willfully ignorant. You're proud to highlight your ignorance. And that, to me, is where the problem rises. And nobody should be proud to be ignorant. That is the fundamental reason I hate anybody who says they don't know how to program, nor should they know how to program. And especially when they recommend other people not know how to program. That's unforgivable. because the willful ignorance is pretty much the issue. Like I said, you can learn to program anywhere. There's free courses. You can get a Harvard course in how to program Python to put on your fake LinkedIn resume or something. And all these people taking mini courses at Harvard or somewhere else saying that they're now a Harvard graduate. I hate that, but that's what they do. And frankly, Harvard wants to devalue their stuff. Good for them. Anyway, but if you're not taking advantage of this and you want to enter cybersecurity, that's on you for being willfully ignorant. So now going back to experience, do you need experience in cybersecurity? The answer for most jobs is yes. Because when you hear about all these job openings, and when I talk to my friends about who are unemployed, a lot of the reasons, so like one that was really painful, there was this guy I knew who worked at NSA. And then he went to be an NSA contractor, and then he went back for his master's degree at University of Maryland Global Campus and got his master's degree in cybersecurity. And he couldn't get a job. And I was like, well, he had a clearance, but the problem was the only jobs that were open were people who had hands-on skills or had specialty skills and had to fill out documents or something like that in the defense world. And the problem is that you need to have the right type of experience. So when I start telling people if they want to go into cybersecurity, your best bet is not to go into cybersecurity as an entry-level role. Your best bet is to get skills in programming, network administration, a bunch of other types of skills and attributes. And then you could go into, I call them cybersecurity adjacent roles. And then once you get to a level, if somebody needs a security administrator, frankly, there's a lot more, it's a lot easier to say, hey, I have 10 years of experience administering Linux systems or Unix systems or Windows systems, whatever it is, and I know how to secure these systems. Because generally, when you do a job as a system administrator, it's really just your tweak of your resume to make it sound like you're a security administrator. Because most of the jobs you do as a system administrator have security-related responsibilities. And that's pretty much true in any type of IT discipline. Even project management, again, you don't want to go into cyber, you want to get into cybersecurity, get a role where you can as a project manager and start developing project management skills. And then you're a senior project manager, maybe you have your green belt, black belt, or whatever those belts are, and then you could easily get a job in a cybersecurity program that's looking for an experienced project manager. They don't need somebody without experience because, again, the purpose of cybersecurity is to secure other disciplines of a business. If you don't understand the other disciplines of a business, you're going to have a problem because there's no role directly related, and most of the people are doing mid-level jobs, not entry-level jobs. So anyway, let's see. Cybersecurity skills shortage is self-imposed, in my opinion, and this is primarily because of the cybersecurity adjacent jobs. When we got in there, and a few people I know in this room used to work at NSA, and at NSA and other places, what happened was some days, one job you were doing as a programmer in operations, the next time you were doing a job that was sort of kind of related maybe to cybersecurity, the next time you were a configuration manager and so on. And all of these roles kind of come together. And like then when somebody had a cybersecurity position, you could go in and fill those positions and so on. But anyway, most of the openings, entry level doesn't mean no qualifications, doctors. If you want to be a doctor, that's pretty much 20 years, well, not 20, that's an exaggeration, but it is, well, if you include high school and basic, it's pretty much 20 years of education, 8 years beyond, quote, 8 years beyond graduate school and so on. There's every other profession that's out there kind of requires some preparation. Even if you want to be a project manager, they want you to take a PMP course as an example. There are qualifications required in everything else. And fundamentally, everybody out there wants to be a hacker. I really hate when schools and colleges focus on these cyber, what do they call it, the cyber campaign, like the hack, the capture the flag type of things. And one reason I hate that, in one way I like it because you have to learn collateral skills. And another reason I don't like it is because you're training people to be a hacker. That's not a large percentage of the population. I think at Walmart, less than 1% of our staff were people who did red teamings, and we had a really, really large staff. So you got to start to consider that. And I'm not going to trust you to hack something if you don't know how to secure it, because I have done penetration testing, and boy, have I come really, really close to screwing things up. Every penetration tester I know has come really close to screwing things up if they've done anything of consequence. And these people need to know when to stop it and know how to fix it when things go wrong. And most people can. And this is part of the other thing kind of towards the closing. You're not a hacker. You're a cybersecurity professional. You're not there to be a Nelson, if you know what I mean, from The Simpsons, who just shows up and goes, ha ha. You're there to say, hey, you know what? Your cybersecurity program missed this, and here's how you go ahead and fix it systematically. And that's one of the more critical things. Why don't employers provide training? Because this is one of the things, frankly, it's a lot of time. We want to hire people who can walk in and do the job. Otherwise, I have to take people away to train you, to watch you, to mentor you, and everything like that. In the ideal world, should I? Sure, NSA did that for me. But the reality of the situation is most organizations don't have the luxury of having such intricate training programs to make people without competency competent and so on. So my recommendations, kind of like when I want to be an astronaut, people forget this. If you want to be in cybersecurity, or if you're training people, you're in cybersecurity, want to take on another role, start going ahead and figuring out what are the qualifications you need to do that job, and get those qualifications. Because again, maybe you're not going to get the job you want right now. Like, I still never became an astronaut. I know people don't know that yet, but I still never became an astronaut, but I still learned an awful lot, having the goal of going to college and then somehow ending up as a career in a spy that I still don't know how I ended up. So you got to start to think this thing. It's not what makes it there. Stay away from InfoSec Twitter. That is just a cesspool of humanity, even beyond what Twitter is, just as a heads up. And then networking, because that's how you're going to get your jobs more than sending your applications in and so on. Don't listen to anybody who's influencer in their profile. Block their profile. Just save yourself the aggravation. Block those people. Look into cybersecurity adjacent positions if you're not in one already. Network internally. So, for example, you get a good position like people did in my knock. Then they would suck up to me as the CISO saying, hey, you got any cybersecurity positions? So anyway, always be careful of somebody who tells you what you don't need instead of what you do need. That's just wise advice, everything, because everybody's telling, oh, you don't need to program, you don't need a college degree, you don't need experience, you don't need anything. It's like, so I just show up and apply for jobs and I'm supposed to get a job that way? That's what you would think they're trying to tell you. And then especially when they want money or tell you to like their posts, again, they're completely worthless individuals. Buy my books, they're awesome. These are the latest ones. And, oh yeah, anybody knows I'm organizing CruiseCon, which is really a conference on a ship. Here's the 10% discount if you want that. And that's the presentation. And so, thanks. Yeah, you can ask. I think he wants to know if anybody has questions.
All right, I want to ask your take on programming. So I am not a programmer. I've been doing this for 25 years, but I actually taught programming at the university. But I still don't consider myself a programmer because I hated doing it. But I'm reiterating what you're saying is you got to understand the fundamentals of it. But what's your take on, I don't like to keyboard and program anymore, but so what?
So people are like, because I travel roughly 40 weeks a month, 40 weeks a year. I travel so much I don't remember what a month or a year is. But anyway, the joke was, people are like, how do you do it? I keep reminding myself that if I'm not on a plane or something, I'm going to be sitting in front of a computer terminal programming. So that's my attitude of it. So, I mean, you don't have to like programming, but the fact is to understand the basics. Because I don't know about you, but every so often I have to pull up a spreadsheet. I have to write a less than trivial program to get numbers out. I have to, like I said, take my class to get my doctoral degree. I thought I was buried my need to program, And then all of a sudden, I'm taking this class that they made me take because it's taken me 30 years to get my degree. And then all of a sudden, they're like, oh, we need you to write a basic Python program. I'm like, what the actual, you know, it's helpful. And then I don't know if anybody knows this, but if you want a job at Facebook, they actually make everybody program. And so if you want a high-paying job at Facebook, you have to program something. I don't know what it is, but I don't know if I answered the question, but it sounded good to me. Yeah. Oh,
I've been doing this a while. I've done help desk. I've sat in a mud hole and spliced trunk cabling back together after a backhoe went through it. I've done networking, system administration, and now I have my CISSP, and I feel like I'm underemployed. How would I highlight that on my resume, do you think, to get the most attention?
so fundamentally, my biggest advice to you would be to network to find your next job, not to highlight it on your resume. That's number one, which is not your question. Number two, I would say, though, is really, like I mentioned before, if you take what you've been doing, you can tweak it to make it sound like you probably have a decade of cybersecurity experience. Because even like this, for example, I once, and this is a side subject, but I literally once wired my whole house for Ethernet because I wanted to learn how to do it. I once built a computer. Did I really want to do it? No, but I didn't want to pay somebody $500 to do it, to learn to put chips in and flip toggles and everything like that. But at the same time, to your point, I'm going to say you take your resume, you tweak it to rewrite it, and I'm not saying you be generous in how you describe it or lie about, well, you're not going to lie about how you describe your work, but you're going to be generous how you incorporate cybersecurity principles into there, because not only, for example, might you have had to wire things and stuff like that, you had to securely wire things to ensure that there were no covert channels and other things like that, whether you know it or not. So there's ways of taking what you did and better highlighting that experience while you're networking to get better jobs. Okay, thanks, everybody.
Do a big round of applause for IR, everybody. Thank you so much.